We're back with a bonus conversation you'll only see here on CBS News New York. So I'd like to go back to the book. And in the book, you talk about the possibility that the military could stage a coup and determine who the next president is. Is that fiction, or could that really happen?
Americans' trust in various institutions has just been dropping and dropping. One of the last institutions that people do trust is the military. And if I was in charge of the military, you might want to plan on various contingencies. So this is well within the realm of possibility and plausibility.
Do you think the military leaders, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, are actually thinking about that possibility, taking a look at Joe Biden and the possibility that with former President Trump could make a comeback? I
think a lot of folks were surprised by the magnitude and extremism of January 6th. And then after that, they started to think, you know what, we should really have more plans in place for things that we might not have thought were possible.
So were you looking into a crystal ball and thinking the military may be planning for the possibility of a coup? Was that fiction, or do you think that based on, you know, your intelligence and whatever, that it could really happen?
Well, I think that military leaders don't want this responsibility, but I think that more of them are starting to think it may fall in their direction.
So I was very moved by a lot of the things that you wrote about in the book, and I want to talk to you about it. The presidential candidate, Cooper Sherman, says, and I quote, "We got one party that has stopped believing in democracy, and you got another party that isn't willing to do what it takes to defend democracy." Do you think that's true today?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. One of my great frustrations with the Democratic Party is they'll say, hey, a vote for us is a vote in favor of democracy, but they'll do things like spend 7 figures supporting an election denier against Peter Meijer in Michigan because they think that would be smart politics and Peter Meijer is easier to beat. Whereas he's the more moderate who actually voted to impeach Donald Trump. He did exactly the thing we imagine we'd praise people for, which is put democracy over their own political interests, but then that didn't give him a pass from Democrats. If anything, it made them all the more eager to replace him with an election denier.
So is there too much money in politics?
There's too much money in politics, and everyone knows it.
How do you get rid of it? I mean, there's PACs, there's this, there's that.
It's one reason why the Forward Party exists, because you have 2 parties that are in the pocket of special interests, and we all kind of know it. And the Forward Party is a genuine, independent, popular movement saying enough is enough. We want a government that works for us again.
Another line from your book. Fear and loathing are much more relatable vote harvesters than vision and hope. Fear and loathing get people to vote, not vision and hope, really? You believe that?
That's the data. You know, it's one reason why we're all exposed to so many negative ads in the closing days of a campaign, is that negative ads work. You know, they get you thinking twice about a particular candidate, and it moves votes. It moves votes more than if I have this positive, uplifting type of ad. So unfortunately, it's preying on human nature and the way our brains are wired.
But when your political advisors came to you and say, we got to go negative at the end of the campaign, what was your reaction?
Well, in my case, I was never in that situation, Marcia, because in the presidential, I was the plucky underdog, and like me trashing people didn't make any sense. It's also not really my nature.
But in the mayoral race, the same thing.
And the mayoral, I was the front runner until the last number of days, and so it also probably did. I mean, you know, it's like it didn't make that much sense for me to be attacking people, and again, it's not really.
But other people went
my
negative.
Disposition. Oh yeah, all the time. You know, I mean, again, it's politics, and that's what their consultants told them to do.
But how do you get rid of that? I mean, we are in a country right now that is totally divided because of that very thing, because of the play on negativity. And the Forward Party wants to eliminate that. But the question is, can you ever do that given human nature? Well,
Marcia, the wonderful thing is that if you had no party primaries and anyone can vote for anyone with ranked choice voting, then if I trash you, you look bad, I also look kind of bad, and then the third candidate looks relatively better. So a better process will actually weaken the incentives for us to dunk on each other. It also helps more collaborative candidates and women and underrepresented minority candidates because they can build broader coalitions. Another line from your book. A candidate without scandal is weaker than a candidate with scandal. Really? Well, so one of the themes of the book is that it's not scandal that kills you, it's when they can turn a strength into a weakness. And so an average scandal, if you get through it, actually probably does make you stronger.
I mean, in the book you talk about how it helped Bill Clinton, it helped W. I mean, seriously, scandal helps?
At this point, it probably gives you a third dimension and makes voters think, okay, I know what this person's skeleton is, because they won't believe you don't have a skeleton in your closet.
So, as we're sitting here right now, would you call on Joe Biden to step aside for the good of the country?
I would. I would say, hey, Joe, you've done incredible things, but it's time to step aside for the good of the country. At a minimum, let there be a competitive primary.
Would you call on Donald Trump to step aside for the good of the country?
Of course, though I don't think it would work, because Donald Trump's all about Donald Trump, which is one reason why he cannot be allowed to win. He would be a disaster, and the Forward Party is going to be organizing swing voters in the swing states to try and keep it from happening.
How will a third-party candidate be able to take people away from Donald Trump, given the fact that if you take a look at the polls right now, he is leading the Republican primary, given the fact that he gets 30 to 40, sometimes 50% of the Republican Party vote?
Well, this is why the Forward Party is so important, Marcia, because at this point, it's all about teams. It's all about tribes. And so if you go and say to Republicans, hey, vote for the Democrat, they'd be like, no way. But if you can go to a group of genuine independents and say, look, you don't love either of these teams. I get it. We're just like you. So let's come together and support whichever party or candidate will support opening up the system and process, letting us all vote for whomever we want, get a real concession, and then you can hold your nose and vote for that party without saying, look, I'm on this team or that team.
So is there any way in the realm of reality that Andrew Yang would think of running for president in 2024?
Well, my joke, Marcia, is apparently I've got another 40 years to consider running, but I'm about trying to help the country. If I thought a run would be positive and productive, I'd consider it. But right now, I think the best thing I can do is build a Forward Party and help around the country.
You think the Forward Party would put forward a forward candidate for president in 2024? I
think Americans deserve a system that would allow us to actually vote for who we want, rather than being bludgeoned and saying, hey, you must vote for this, the lesser of two evils.
So right now you're saying it's vote low, lesser of two evils?
I mean, that's the way a lot of Americans feel. I mean, again, 2/3 of Americans aren't pumped about the Biden-Trump rematch, and yet we're being told, again, 330 million people in this country. These are your choices? Come on. It doesn't make any sense.
But the problem is that with 330 million people, this many people vote. I mean, so really, this many people are deciding the future of 330 million people. What's with that?
Well, the way you're describing this, it makes me think of the party primaries, and that's certainly the nomination process. But the presidential will get much more in the way of broad energy and attention. And it's one reason why people are going to show up and say, wait a minute, these are my choices. If we had better choices, it would also energize more people to think their vote might actually make a difference.
Andrew Yang, the last election. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us as well.